Welcome to the Cancer Journey Institute podcast. I'm Alicia Tom.
And I'm Sherry Ann Tom.
So we're going to start with a Pesh. I can start.
Okay.
Okay, so physically, I am a 6. Emotionally, I am a 7.5. Spiritually, I am a 6, and my hope is an 8.5. And my word is congested.
I need this because I do need to ground in this moment. So, okay. Physically, I am a 7.8. Emotionally, 8.3. Spirit, 8.75. And hope, 9.2. And my word is possibilities.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So we want to start with something that we do a lot in our, I would say mostly our certification, at the very beginning, and it's kind of a getting to know you sort of exercise, but we call it if you really knew me, you would know, dot, 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 and then you fill in the blank.
Right. So I can go first because I wrote a newsletter on this, so I think it's going to be out there and people are already going to know, but let's do this orally and out loud. So if you really knew me, you would know that I'm an extrovert turning slightly into an introvert. And so I like doing things out loud, but that introvert part of me makes me a little bit shy. And people don't think that I'm shy. So if you really knew me, you would know that there's this really goofy, not serious, kind of silly person here that wants to come out and be all bubbly because positivity is my number one strength. And then there's that inner critic, my negative ego that comes out and says, shh,
Yeah.
a lot because that's what I heard growing up and through my life. It's like, whew, you're too much, Sherry Ann. Just calm down. And so it's pretty ingrained. And so if you really knew me, you would know that I'm trying to bust that. Yep. Even at 62, trying to bust that shh and just let myself really be me. Goofy, my new glasses. So red and funky. Um, yeah, just letting me be me. I think
Yeah.
that's good for now. You try.
If you really knew me, you would know that while I'm often perceived as like extra bubbly, I don't perceive myself that way. I perceive myself very seriously. With a large amount of intensity, I would say. But people always say like, "Oh, you're so bubbly." So if you really knew me, you'd know that I don't necessarily feel that way internally. If you really knew me, you would know that I'm really close with my family, which is often something that people don't assume because I'm all the way across on the other side of the country away from my family. For no lack of love, it's actually out of deep love and trust in my family and our connection with one another that I'm able to be out here and still remain so close with them. If you really knew me, you would know I'm very creative. It's actually my number one value is creativity. And I love to be creative in many, many different ways. Another thing that I say about myself is that my toxic trait is that I think I can make or do anything. But with my creativity, it really does serve me because I do create things and I at least get to try and fail and figure out what works and what doesn't work. But that edge of creativity and being able to just try has been really important to me and it continues to be really important for me.
I like that you said values because I was bringing up my strength of positivity and that really does carry over into my values. It's like they're kind of not married together, but they feed each other. So
Yeah.
while I'm positive, and I didn't always like positivity being my number one strength, I have grown to love that. But what I really do know is that it feeds my value of adventure. And
Mm.
my value of adventure is like, what's new? What's there to discover? It's this curiosity in me that
Yeah.
keeps propelling me forward. And it's not like, oh, life's going, what's the underbelly of life? It's more like, what's the exciting part of life? What is there for me to experience because it's exciting, it's awakening, it's enhancing. Like
Yeah.
I love discovering new stuff.
Yeah. And it all just feeds off one another. Yeah, absolutely. I feel that way with my strengths and values as well. And even sometimes when they're kind of in contrast with each other, I'd say. Like my number one strength is command and my number two is deliberative. So I really do feel those often. And I think there's a lot of seriousness that comes with that, but the creativity lets me like explore within that. And so deliberative can be very it's a decelerator, so it can slow you down, it can really, um sometimes it triggers my negative ego, and I become very, very risk adverse, but with the creativity, I can see more possibilities, and I'm interested in looking more possibilities rather than being stopped. And just for clarity with us, what we are calling our strengths are based on Don Clifton's study of the strengths, his Clifton strengths, and the Clifton Strengths Assessment. So everyone has that 34, all 34 strengths that are within this report. And based on the assessment you take and the answers you give, it ranks them differently for everyone. So everyone does have these strengths. This is positive psychology. But we just have them in different orders. So some of them are in our top 10 and some of them are just our non-strengths necessarily. And it doesn't mean that we can't achieve those same outcomes that we're looking for. It just means that we do it in a different way, our own unique way.
Yes, yes. That's why I love this particular assessment so much more because, and I love the statistic, 1 in 33 million is like you in just your top five and the order that your top five is in. That's amazing to me.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, yes, at the very least, I can stand here and say I'm 1 in 33 million. But I know when I add in the other ones, and then I add in my values that we're talking about, and I add in what I uniquely bring to this world, that there's nobody like me. And I
yeah,
can stand in that, and that whole thing about imposter syndrome. I don't have to have that because I know who I am, which is like, hey, this is the antidote to imposter syndrome, but it's also what I get to lean into
mhm,
just because I know me. And when I was saying before, I want to let that silly goofy part out, that that's okay, that's what the world needs from me instead of me kind of pushing it down and pushing it away. So
yeah. And I
yeah.
think the exercise of like, if you really knew me, you would know, allows us to take back some of the power we may have given away from expectations from other people, right? Because um, I think we've both mentioned things that like other people expect from us, but this is what you'd
Yeah.
really know if you knew us at our core. Um, yeah, and it gives us that power back and able to really own and hone what is us. And know that something that's been coming up for me a lot, and I think this also kind of comes back to the topic of our newsletter for that we just finished, is that being your most authentic self is going to attract the people who are your people by trying
Mhm.
to belong to a group that like you don't necessarily resonate with their values or some of their values contradict your own, it's never going to feel in alignment. There's always going to be some sort of like forced energy to it that doesn't feel as genuine as you may want to. And so, while it's such a hard lesson, and it's like so much easier said than actually done, but to be your fullest self and like let people come find you and like accept you and your true self is super hard. It's super hard. It's so much easier to pretend sometimes just to appease the people. So that's just such a hard line there. But if you really
Right.
knew, you would know, really brings it back to you. And like it allows you to share maybe parts of yourself you haven't shared with other people, right? Like Sherry, and I feel like a lot of times in certain situations you don't allow that silly part of you to come out. But by saying, if you really knew me, you would know that there is that side, then it shares the fact that that exists and that's a part of you.
Right. Right. Oh, and when you bring up the whole thing about belonging, I mean, and that's I really feel like that's a big crux of it because we're all connected. We just know this. And yet, okay, so I can go to the shy part, which is like, oh, I'm shy because I'm afraid of being judged, or I'm shy because I'm afraid of being rejected. I want to belong.
Mhm.
I want to know that I'm not floating out here in the world all by myself. So we go into that morphing, or what does this group, want, or um, what are they like? And all of a sudden I feel myself like, okay, I can do that so that I belong. But
Mhm.
that's not what I really want. It's exactly what you said. I want to be me in the true sense, me. And then I want to attract the people that like not are like me, but accept me. And it's
Mhm.
like,
You
sure.
see both sides of yourself.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's not trying to be in a group of alike people. It's wanting to be in a group of accepting, open. I can't think of another word right now, but
Yeah.
accepting, open, and
Consistent
non-judgmental
people.
people.
Yeah. Like people who really get you without trying to change you or judge you um for who you are or however you're presenting in that moment, right? Oh, it's so interesting that we talk about this because what comes up a lot just on like a very general level is like when you're growing up and you're making friends and kids are mean to you and you start to kind of lose sight because you're also trying on different personalities and figuring out what's real for you and what's not. But a conversation I've had a lot recently with some friends is um, being your full self means that there's going to be some like not pretty parts of yourself. They're going to be parts of yourself that you're having a bad day or you're just frustrated. And so you don't come off in the kindest way. But true friendships, true communities don't hold those moments against you.
Hmm.
And they allow you to come back and even give you the space to apologize or to acknowledge what had happened. But they don't take all of these good experiences and then this one bad one and hold it against you and define you based on that because that's so unfair. And I think a lot of
Right,
times those experiences are some of the reasons that we're propelled to feel like we can't be ourselves and our fullest, truest selves with other people.
right. Especially when somebody's on a cancer journey, right? Let me just bring it back to what we do. We're looking for that place where we feel safe,
Yeah. Oh,
to really
yeah.
be ourselves. And we may be feeling like horrible because, I don't know, chemicals are floating through my body and make me feel like crap,
Hmm.
or I'm reacting to a drug, or I have allergies or a cold, whatever. I'm just not feeling physically like myself.
Right.
And so I'm not showing up in my best self. But if we could be in a place where we're accepted and belonging, then someone could say, it looks like you're having an off day. How can I
Yeah.
help you? Or what do you need? Instead of us trying to be like all it's all, I'll just keep it contained here, and I'll just go hide in my bed, put the covers overhead. I'm having a bad day, instead of having someone say, "You're still you. What do you need?"
Yeah.
And learn to help you, instead of us against the world, or us against whatever we're dealing with. It's like, oh, I don't have to do it all by myself.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I think we're looking for, and why we want to be authentic, because then people see us as whole people, not broken.
Yes, absolutely. And whole people have a wide spectrum of emotion and experience where we're going through different things. Like to have one moment or even like a few moments define who you are negatively by someone, or even to feel that like other people are waiting for that moment to back away where it can be your fault instead of theirs, right? That feels really like isolating. And that's where I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of feelings of abandonment come up.
Yeah.
And that's not to say everyone's perfect and that it's easy to do either side of this, right? To live with that awareness. That's actually very, very hard to do. It's not something that comes naturally to everyone. Um, but the more we try to, and the more we try to communicate it and share it with other people, the wider that view gets and the easier it becomes because um, when we're triggered by those like really intense, possibly negative emotions, possibly positive emotions, um, other people kind of perceive the energy, and instead of remaining open even to what they're experiencing with your influx of intensity, they like shelter up and they're like, oh, that's too much, that's too much, I can't deal with it, instead, and they back away instead of being like, wow, I just observed a lot from you. And instead of remaining curious about what the experience is, they remove themselves because it's easier. But is it? Because at the end of the day, you're just pushing more and more people away, and then you're not giving yourself the opportunity to have those deep connective moments with people where
Right.
it could change the course of your relationship or your friendship.
It does happen on a cancer journey is people we thought were going to be there for us. Sometimes it's even a best friend, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden they're gone. They disappear, and you're like, what did I do? And it's so hard not to take that on. It's like, I did something wrong to make you go away. With but what I've seen and what I've learned in reality is that's not necessarily about you. It's more often than not about the other person and what they can't be with. And
Yeah.
cancer is a really big topic. I mean, like, everybody has their own fears about it and stories that they make up about it. So
Hmm.
when you, the individual, I'll just use me. So when I have cancer, or had cancer, I don't have it anymore. Um, I just noticed that there were people who just weren't around. And it's like, I thought I was close to that person. I really actually thought that person would be here to support me. And they were nowhere to be found. And then
Right.
I find out later, when I had the courage to ask what happened, they were like, oh, I got triggered. That just reminded me of when my mom died, or whatever their story was, and I just couldn't. I had to insulate and be with that myself, and I couldn't be there for you. Wow. That brave moment of asking the question made me feel like, okay, I didn't do anything wrong. But immediately it's like, we take this on, and then then I start, oh, here's that morphing, people pleasing.
Hmm.
I think what we talked about in another podcast of, so how, what do you need, and how can I
Right.
make you feel better, because you disappeared, you went away, and it wasn't my job.
Yes, but it feels, especially because we can't feel what anyone else is feeling except for what's truly our own, right? Even no matter how empathic we are, but especially when you try to be empathic, you start taking on the responsibility of other people's um actions and their emotions, but then we try to justify it to ourselves because we're we're happy to continue to try to make that connection, and we want clarity, and we want a way to understand like what happened.
Hmm.
um yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just want to pause here, um because I think we're getting some really like juicy stuff, some like can and cannot control stuff. So
Okay.
takeaway, do you want to start with the takeaway, Sherry Ann?
Yeah. What's coming up for me is that it's so easy to be over responsible. Like I feel like when I'm not getting the response that I'm wanting, I go over responsible and think that I did something wrong or I need to lean in even more. And the reality is when I'm saying, this is who I really am and I'm really wanting to just stand in the true me, that
Hmm.
I don't have to over responsible. I don't
Yeah.
have to be overly responsible. So that's a big takeaway right now in this discussion. And my word is patient. Like I want to be patient with myself because I'm still a work in progress. I think we all are. And
Mhm.
so patience.
Yeah.
Okay. Your
So
takeaway and word.
my takeaway is very, very similar. Um, and something that continues to come up for me personally, like in my life, especially lately, but in general, it's something I remind myself is that um, sometimes sometimes it's theirs and sometimes it's yours, and every interaction is interpersonal, so even if you make a passive choice that you think doesn't affect someone else, it does. It does. Yeah, our choices always affect the people around us. So knowing what's yours and what's theirs and what you do have control of, because you don't have control over the emotions or the outcome that are someone else's to make, or even just the words they choose. That's their own thing to hold and not yours. So if you really knew me, you would know, brings the responsibility back to self, and it helps you, like, we think that we say it because we're sharing it with everyone, but really it's helping you get grounded in who you are and what's truest for you. Um, which is why it's such a beautiful exercise. And my word is peace. Like finding,
Mm, wonderful.
yeah. So thank you for watching. We'll be back next week with another episode.
Bye for now.